What's up, Georgina?
I'm so excited to be here right now.
This is awesome. So just to kind of do a little intro here, you actually I consider you one of my mentors from when I first got in the real estate industry. One of my earliest memories of you was, I remember I was sitting in the cubicle at Century 21 Professionals, and you were talking to the transaction coordinator, Jamie, and you were saying how you're like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. I'm opening up 4 escrows this week, and I had like no escrows, and I had just started, and I'm like, who is this lady, and how does she have 4 escrows? What do I have to do? And so that mentorship led to, I guess, kind of a partnership, because we spent a lot of time together at Century 21, learning, growing, failing together.
Yes.
That turned into a friendship. And now you fast forward, you guys are even my clients now.
I know it.
So
Isn't
we've
it
come
crazy?
full circle. We were just talking about it. So for all the viewers out there, we met in like probably the latter part of 2006, maybe the early part of 2007. So it's been
Nearly 18 years.
18
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for being a guest on my show. The show is called Elevate, and the goal is that you and I talk about stuff, just normal stuff.
Okay.
And the hope is that the viewers who watch it find a nugget or nuggets that help them elevate their life in one way or shape.
Love that. And I'm so excited to be here and see what you've done in
Yes.
so many years.
Yes.
So proud of you.
So let's jump in. I think we met in real estate, so it's only appropriate to start the conversation with real estate.
Sure.
So how did you get into real estate? Like, give us the kind of 30,000 foot overview of how you ended up there. Because I know most people don't go, I want to be a real estate agent when I grow up.
No, that's not how it happened. So I used to work in Hollywood in post-production, and it was a very, very busy job. I was working 24/7. Not that real estate is not busy. Didn't know yet,
Flexible
though.
schedule.
Yeah, flexible schedule, whoever tells you that. Anyway, and I was a single mom at the time, and I was missing all of my kids' activities and just wasn't getting enough time with them. And I thought, what can I do to be able to spend more time with my kids, right?
Yeah.
And I did. So I got my real estate license. And I will say, even though you work 24/7, it is flexible. I was able to take my kids with me to open houses, to show properties, and just work from home a lot of the time. So it became a really big challenge, but it was life-changing, because then I was able to be at their sports. And that was my motivation, to be able to support them while having flexibility to be a mom first. And it worked. It was hard, but it worked out real well.
Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of people say is, I'm always actively recruiting for my team. And the one thing I get is, I'm looking to do real estate part-time to make some side money, or I'm looking to do something that offers me a flexible schedule. And I'm like, well, it'll be flexible. You'll be working every night and every weekend and every holiday and all those things. But all joking aside, with the right strategy, you can find ways to create a real estate business around a life that you want to live if you're intentional about it.
Absolutely. I mean, I have done miracles from the pool. While my kids are swimming,
Right.
I've been on phone calls with my laptop. So, I mean, you can make it work, but it's intentional. It's got to be intentional.
Yeah.
And hardworking too.
One of my favorite stories with you in real estate was the $250,000 queen. Do you remember we used to call you that?
Oh, great. Yes, I do. And that was a lot of work.
Every single deal you ended up being like 225 to 275, and we're like,
couldn't
Georgina's the
break
$250,000 queen. All joking aside, why didn't we buy all those $250,000 properties? Because they're all worth $1 million plus now.
Looking back, wouldn't that have been brilliant? Oh my goodness!
Hindsight is definitely 20/20.
And then he would go and get an escrow. Oh, we just got a $600,000 limit, which back then it was like,
millions.
I've got to do 3 transactions to do one of yours.
Yeah. $600,000 transaction back in 2007-8 is like 1.3 right now, 1.4. So.
Yeah, I did not like my title, by the way. I'm just gonna say that. But it
we
became fun.
We had a lot of fun.
We had a good time with it.
So we obviously spent a lot of time in real estate, the ups and the downs, the short sales, the REOs. And then you just left. Yeah. You left the business, and I was like so jealous. I was like, oh my gosh, she's leaving. She doesn't have to do real estate anymore. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, what did it feel like leaving real estate after so many years of doing it? And what was the driving factor behind, like, what was pulling you out, and what were you looking to do?
I'm going to be honest. I didn't leave real estate because I didn't like it or I was frustrated with it. It was a very tough season. It was the 2008, 2009. We had all the short sales. working 24/7 for most escrows never to close. I mean, it was a very difficult time.
We were just talking about it yesterday because nobody on my team experienced that.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
The longest standing agent I have on my team is Ryan. He's celebrating 7 years with me.
Wow.
And so that's like 2017 or something like that.
Crazy.
So, the market turned in 2012, 2013, but we were telling him, I was like, Ryan, I would put an escrow on the board. Remember we used to write them on the board?
Yes.
I was so excited to write on the board. And then I would think to myself, is this even going to close? And if it does, will it close in less than a year?
Okay, so remember that when they didn't close or when they did and you had to go erase it, it had been on there so long that you couldn't erase it off the board. That's how long it took to close.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this will be great. Perhaps we'll have a paycheck in 12 months. I mean,
you needed to have like 5 to 7 escrows with hopes to get a paycheck in like a year.
But you know what? But we did it. Like we
did it.
kept
I don't know
going and
how
we
we
did
did
it. I don't even, but we did. And so that's not why I left the business, quite honestly, even though it was hard, especially with kids and they were at an age where sports get expensive. I mean, it was tough, but that wasn't it really. It was kind of a different calling that kind of organically came up. During the really hard times, even in our own office, I had agents that would come to my office and they knew I was going through hell sometimes in my personal life and in my professional life and all the challenges I had going on. And they would be like, why is it that you're always so joyful? Like you always have this fun, joyous, no matter what happens, you could lose an escrow and it's like, it's okay. Like you just have this peace. And that kind of stirred something in me. And people I got invited to speak at a church at a women's group. It was a huge encouragement to the women. It's like suddenly this kind of gift that God had put in my heart, apparently many years ago, started just sprouting. And I started getting invitations. Before you knew it, I was actually traveling all over the world. And really, I had to make a decision. It's always a decision.
Yeah.
Everything. My father always told me, everything is a decision. He was so right. So I had to pick. I can't keep up with this real estate business if I'm traveling and getting more invitations. But what am I supposed to do? And it wasn't clear at the time. And truly, it was like a miraculous set of things that came together. But it was because I was being intentional about what am I supposed to do and taking leaps of faith. It was scary. Yeah. But I thought, God hasn't brought me this far just to have me think this was just a little side gig. So I took a huge leap of faith and I said, no, you know what? I want to encourage people. I want to do something more than this. In real estate, I did always encourage people. I mean, I would get so invested in my clients' situations and I loved just carrying them through to their goal. But this was different. This was people that were going through hard times, giving them hope, bringing them faith, taking them from a place where they're stuck to somewhere else. So I took a huge leap of faith and boy, it's been 15 years of just doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
That's awesome.
And I love it.
And you could tell, I can hear it in your voice and your tonality and the passion behind it all. So I'm so happy for you. So, obviously kind of going down that same road, what was it like growing up in a household where both of your parents were literally all in on God?
You know what? It was a beautiful childhood because my parents both practiced what they preached always. And my father, as you know, traveled the entire world. He has spoken to millions. And till today, people email me, your father, because of him, my whole life was changed. So I grew up seeing all these miracles. It was incredible. I grew up with that kind of faith. But, and I won't get into it today because we'd be here all weekend, but I did have a situation in my life where I turned my back on God and on my faith. And for 10 years, I created a mess out of my life, complete mess. And truly, I suffered so much. I was so broken at that time that when I turned my life around and came back to God in a very humble fashion, He went restoring me in every place in my heart. And He has done a radical change in my entire life. And that's why I have the passion. When I see a woman that is in that very place that thinks, man, I've blown it so much, I can never get back. I'm embarrassed, I feel guilt, fear, resentment, all those things. When I see somebody stuck in that position, I'm like, oh oh, no, 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 no. There is a different way. There is hope. Because that was me, you know? And so I see people like God sees us for who he sees us as, not for what we think we are, you know, all broken and with all these
I'm not worthy
issues. I'm not worthy and I've messed up and I'm just so imperfect. I've got so many issues. He doesn't see us that way. So I'm learning every time more to see people as God sees us, because he can do so much through us, but we limit ourselves. So part of that has been taking risks, like leaving real estate and going to do this. And it just keeps getting better and better, you know, but it takes a lot of faith and it takes a lot of decisions that are intentional. And you got to think big. You got to think God's size, not our size, you know, and that's how you move forward. God's got great plans for all of us. He wants to prosper us where we're planted, but we have to do our part.
Yeah. I love that. So you kind of touched on your dad a little bit. You said people still reach out and tell you how much of an impact your dad had on their lives. Your dad was a pretty big deal.
He was a really, he still is a really big deal. Well, you came to his celebration of life, so you know how many people love him.
It was huge. Yeah, it was so huge. I mean, what was that like? I mean, would you get stopped in public and you're like, who's that? How do they know my dad? Like,
all our lives, we'd be out to lunch. I mean, you couldn't, till today, even here at the El Torito in Tustin, you couldn't even go to lunch without people, Dr. Juan Carlos Ortiz, you know, oh, hello, you have changed my life. I mean, testimony after testimony. And that happened. I'll be in Africa. Your dad's book, Disciple, changed my life forever, changed our church. I mean, everywhere people know Dad. And so it was, you know what, it was a really big responsibility too. Being a preacher's kid, and especially a preacher that was so well known. And
even a preacher yourself.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, these are some pretty big footsteps or feet that you have to follow, right? What is it saying?
When I look at it, I'll be honest, I'm like, and I think I said this at his memorial, but I'll never be able to even fit in his socks for that matter, right?
Yeah.
But what he's left me is so much. You know, the principles he has taught me, watching my father's faith and my mom's, both of their faith has been, I never appreciated it until I was older and experienced it in my own life. But wow, you know what, with God, anything is possible. And yeah, those are his words, but guess what? Put it into practice. Test it out in your life, because it's crazy.
You had mentioned your dad said everything is a decision. What's one other or maybe two other things he taught you that you still live by to this day?
Oh my gosh. Do not worry. Oh, if I can just hear his words, sweetie, do not worry. I mean, I would go to his house. He lived about half a mile from me his last years, and I would walk the dog over, and I've got a problem, right? Dad, you know, can you pray for this? Well, I'll pray for you, but sweetie, do not worry. You just have a decision to make. What are you going to do? You know? And he was right. And it all comes out of biblical principles. In the Bible, it says, do not worry for what you will eat tomorrow. If God takes care of the birds, how would he not take care of you? And, you know, another verse says, you know, for nothing be anxious. And everything that he taught me is Bible-based, but he would make it so real in my everyday life. And he's right. I used to worry so much, Robert. I used to not sleep over worry. Every little thing, I would just get wild up and just worry. And let me just tell you, it just hurts you. Yeah. I mean, it's useless energy.
I mean, I'm a worrier. I mean, I feel like that's the culture we live in today. Everyone's always so worried about it. And I don't remember where I was reading it, but it was like 99% of the things we worry about don't even happen.
We make it so much worse. You make it up in your head, you live it, and your body physically feels it as if it were true. So we're just ruining our health, our mind, and where's our head at when we're busy worrying?
I love that.
I mean, we're not even allowing ourselves the opportunity for God to present something awesome for us to do because we're stuck here, you know, still worrying.
You can't make educated decisions when you're freaking out.
No.
Right? So I love that. Don't worry.
You have to practice. Yeah. You have to practice. And again, it all ties in together. You have to make a decision. Don't worry. And everything is a decision. He used to tell me there are no problems, only decisions. And it used to sound so ridiculous to me. But when you really realize everything you're up against you have to react to it. If escrow falls out of escrow, what's your reaction going to be? Oh, my life is over. Which we've seen people in the office do that plenty.
Guilty.
Drama, spreading it around, and
it's all about me. It's like it's all about me. My commission check's gonna vanish. What about your clients whose home their dreams have been crushed?
And it's like we're wallowing because what am I gonna do? Instead, what if you decided that you're gonna, I'm gonna use this to get more clients. I'm going to start making, who else can I help? But again, everything is a decision, right?
I love that. I really do. Because honestly too, it takes the emotion out of it, right? And I'm not saying emotion is bad, but again, when you're overwhelmed with like a negative emotion, it's really hard to make a decision. So it's like, don't worry. I love this. I'm going to start saying this to myself in your dad's accent.
It's so much better that way.
So much better that way. But it's like, don't worry and make a decision. So it's like, okay, stop for a second, take a breath. What can I do? A, B, C. What do I do to move forward?
And look, I'm not talking Pollyanna. I have moments of, I cry. I have moments of sadness. I suffer inside sometimes. But it's not a worry. Obviously I still have emotions. I'm not this robot. But I have truly learned to stop and not allow the stress to infiltrate my soul, because I was killing myself like that. My health wasn't very good. I was literally allowing problems to run my life. Not anymore. You know what? I trust. For me, it's a faith thing, right? And for others, it may not be God, but for me it is. And I have so much trust that God's plan is so much better and that he's got the perfect plan for me, that whatever happens, it just doesn't get to me anymore.
So talking about that, God having a plan and being able to manage emotions, your brother passed away.
Yes.
How did that affect your life?
I was 21 years old at the time. That is when I turned my back on God. Had I known then, when I was 21, everything I know now, I would have done things so differently. But my brother died a brutal death of AIDS back in the day where there just was no treatment. It was awful. And I just couldn't believe God would allow this. And watching my parents suffer through that, I could not believe he could allow my parents to suffer. So it was all, God, how could you do this? How many of us blame God for everything, right? Because he's almighty, he's got control. You know what? What we don't understand is that we don't see God's entire plan. We'll never be able to grasp and understand why certain things happen. There are no answers for some things. And I've learned to be okay with that. In my brother's situation, you know what? He contracted AIDS because of something that he did, and it like any illness, it can happen. And his consequence was death, but I blamed it on God instead. And so those 10 years without faith, it's not that I lost my faith. I was ignoring God. I never stopped believing in God, but I was so mad at him that I wanted to take control of my life. And boy, when I did that, I just made a mess. I mean, you know my story, but I broken marriages, kids out of wedlock. Just a bankruptcy. I made a mess from the very start to the very beginning. 10 years of just going in a bad direction. So the Lord can redeem anybody, because I humbly, when I thought there was no other path forward, it's just kind of the enemy trying to hold you down in bondage. I never thought I could go back to the church, and how shameful that Juan Carlos Ortiz's daughter went through all this mess. And I was like, what are people going to think of me? All this garbage that for years kept me alone, lonely, with destructive behaviors, just because I fell for those negative comments in my mind. And you know what? That's just a trick from the enemy, Robert, because that's not who God says we are. He redeems us. My favorite Bible verse is 2 Corinthians 5:17, that it says, when you are in Christ, you're a new creation. The old is gone. The new is here. And I chose to believe that one day. And I thought, my old is gone. That's what God says. Now, people around me kept reminding me over and over of everything I had done. Trust me, I had plenty of consequences for many years. But God did not remember. He said, your sins and your evil behaviors, I will remember no more. That was the beginning of a completely new identity for me. And I think the difference is that I took it seriously and intentional, and I chose to walk in it as if it already was. And that led me to where I am today.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful to God for offering that to me.
I love that.
Yeah. It's amazing.
So one of my favorite things is, I know my pastor says it all the time, is God does things for us, not to us, you know?
Yes.
So when something bad happens, back in the day, it was like, oh my gosh, why me? I become the victim. But, you know, I always like to now, when things happen that I don't want to happen, I'm like, okay, if things are supposed to happen for us, not to us, then where's the silver lining, or what's the lesson here, or how can I grow from this? So thinking back in your life, are there moments where, I mean, my question is, when you think of the most challenging times in your life, what's maybe one or two instances that come up where you're like, wow, in the moment that was devastating, but in hindsight, it couldn't have been better for me?
I'll tell you. And you and Tanya walked through this with me as well. One of the hardest, again, it was a decision that I had to make, but I felt the conviction of God saying, you need to do this, was when I had been dating who is now my husband and has been for many years, Jeremy, and I loved him to pieces, and he loved me to pieces. But you know what? God was not first in our relationship. Our spiritual lives were totally at a different place, and God was doing a lot of work in me. He was doing a lot of good work in Jeremy, and I knew that I had to leave him and give him up to put God first in my life. That was so rough. And I questioned God. You know, I was tempted to say, Lord, you know, I've already given kind of everything else up in my life because he had been doing such a great work in me. But to leave the biggest, you know, this guy that I knew was good for me, but it wasn't right. Things weren't right, and we could feel it because our relationship was suffering because of it. And you know, you were there with me. And I left. And you know what? We were apart for many months. And during that time, little did I know, as I was crying, missing him still, trying to move forward, but really missing him, but honoring my decision and working on putting God first in every area of my life, God was working in his life, and I didn't even know. And God then brought him back to me. He had the guts to propose after how many months later, and him being so, you know, and he came back, proposed, and he's like, you know, he said, I should have married you a long time ago, but I know now why, because God still needed to do some work in me. And God brought him back to me. You know, it was a huge sacrifice, but he brought him back to me as a godly man. And you know what? We did. We got married, and our lives have never been the same, ever. We're both on God's journey, on the same page on that. Yeah, we don't have a perfect marriage. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Who does?
But yeah, if somebody does, I say stand up.
Comment below if you have a perfect marriage, please.
Please comment below. Sure. But
and you can't be in year one. You have to be. We know year one is perfect.
Past your honeymoon.
Yeah.
No. But we are both, you know, because God is first in our own lives and in our marriage, everything else works itself out the way it's supposed to. But God has taken us on a huge journey. But again, so back to your question, because I'm branching, you know, I didn't understand it at the time. But then looking back, had I married him without us prioritizing God, I could assure you it may have been a failed marriage. I can almost for certain. Yeah. But no, because we ended up taking the time, even though we didn't understand it, and it was very painful to put God first. And he blessed that. He's blessing that. He's blessing it till today. Yeah. You know, we're in such a great stage in life right now.
I'm loving it. I'm watching you guys on social media, and I'm like so jealous. I know jealousy is like not a good thing to have. Like in a good way, I'm just like I'm just so excited for you guys, and I want a piece of that excitement. I'm like you're kind of like goals right now. Like how can Tanya and I work this way out and do what they're doing? That sounds awesome.
You know what? You're younger than I first. quite a bit. So yeah, plenty of time. And to see all you have done, I have been just overjoyed to see what God has done in yours and Tanya's life.
Yeah.
But it's an exciting time. I will say I'm so grateful.
And
Everything has been God ordained. I have more
questions about it for sure.
Yeah.
So we talked about like what was challenging and how you grew from it. Like, what were some things that you, like the most memorable moments in your life, things that you were just so excited to experience?
Excited to experience.
Personal or from your career?
Okay. Well, I will tell you, I think that the most excitement, and excitement seems like such a tiny word because it's just like a passionate excitement, really is when God gives me the opportunity to speak in front of, I say women because honestly, I have a soft spot for women's conferences, to be in a group of women, whether it's 50 women, whether it's thousands of women. I get so excited. I actually get terrified before the event, right? But the minute that I get up there, and the last where I have a routine that I do every single time.
Before you go into that, can you help the audience? And I'm curious to know too, what are you so terrified about?
I'm terrified of all the things that I can control. Am I going to remember my lesson well? Am I going to, I want it to be God speaking through me, because that is when great things happen. And yet we prepare, right? Because we're supposed to prepare, even though the Holy Spirit takes over. But I prepare, but in my preparation, I'm nervous. Is this the right message for this crowd? Am I going to remember the key points? Because as you can see, I'm great at branching out and, getting myself back on pace. Am I going to blah, blah, blah? Am I going to be exhausted? The time frame. And am I going to have a voice? Sometimes I do women's retreats. I speak 5 times in 2 days, and I sometimes lose my voice. It's silly things. And they're all things that I feel like are under my control. But truly, the last thing that I say before going on the pulpit or on the stage is, Lord, let these be your words and not mine. And I repeat that over and over. I have my own little routine of that, of just surrendering my agenda for it to be God's agenda. So But up until that moment, it's, everything has to be perfect. And my husband's already like, it's going to be fine. Of course, then afterwards, how'd it go? It was incredible, But I never feel like I'm good enough to do this. Never. I don't. That's why I need God to do it with me. If he doesn't show up, we're really, really in a scary place.
I love that. I do a lot of public speaking too, and I'll be freaking out, and people will go, "You've done this so many times. Like, why are you so nervous? Just imagine the audience is whatever."
Right.
And it's like, I'm not worried about the audience. I'm not worried about them judging me or me not looking the right way. What I'm worried about is will I be able to present powerfully enough to actually make an impact to the viewer? Because that's really what's most important to me. It's not about getting up there and just looking cool. It's about them leaving going, "Whoa."
Right. I mean, well, the whole reason behind getting up and speaking to anybody is to make some kind of an impact, right? And if you just go, and trust me, I've had a couple of times where it's just kind of been flat, and what I've realized is that was me so worried about dumb things that I got in my own way,
Yeah.
And that's so silly. It's so silly. So I've learned a lot, and you know what? It's not always perfect, but you learn to roll with things. And really, in the end, when you see the impact that your words could have on someone's life, I wouldn't choose to do anything different. I don't care. I don't care what the rigorous process that it is, traveling and being tired and all the preparation, and is it going to be okay? Because it's so worth it.
What is one of your most memorable speaking engagements? When you think about all the times you've spoken, like what's the most miraculous moment that you can think of?
Oh, wow. There's so many beautiful moments, but I will share one specific one. This was actually where was I? In Costa Rica. And we were speaking to a crowd. It was a very mixed crowd. It was an outdoor event. It was packed. And it seems like God always directs me somewhere. You know, sometimes I'll go and everything's all planned out and then he takes me somewhere else. And that was one of these nights where I'm like, I went off script and there was a reason for it. And I saw this girl, this very, very young girl in the crowd that just after a while just started sobbing. And she was a beautiful, beautiful young girl. Probably, well, at the time, now I know how old she was, but she was about 13, 14. And I thought she was 13 or 14. She ended up being 16, actually. Okay. So long story short, I sought her out in the crowd afterwards. And I just went and I hugged her. As soon as I got down, I just went. I didn't ask her anything. I just knew I had to go hug her. And she was just bawling. And she told me her story. And she had just found out a couple of days ago that she was pregnant. Her whole family, if they were to find out, they were going to kick her out. I mean, it was a horrible, horrible situation. She was so ashamed. She had scheduled an abortion and she was about to go in the next day. She goes, something's telling me now, no, that I need, but I don't know how to do this. I mean, she had no options and her money, you know, she didn't have any money. Her family was very poor. I mean, her circumstances were horrible. That night, she made a decision to keep the baby because of listening to the message of hope.
Wow.
And till today, it's been about 10 years since that. She sends me pictures of her little boy. And I mean, it's like through Facebook and everything ended up working so beautifully. But there's so many stories like that of just, again, a decision, right? She made a decision that night. And I knew her life wasn't going to be that simple after that. But she never regretted it. You know, it was life-changing. That's the kind of impact. And boy, there's so many stories, but that one always is just very tender to my heart.
Well, it's scary to even think, like, as you're telling me, I'm just thinking, like, what if Georgina didn't speak that night? Or what if she missed her flight? Or what if the event didn't happen? Like, where would she be today? What would her life be like today? And just to think back at, like, how the dominoes fall.
It's incredible. It's
just incredible. Yeah.
It is. And again, I give all the credit to God. I got to tell you, I do, because I just show up and He's the one that convicts people in their heart. You know, it wasn't necessarily maybe something I said. It was the Spirit working through me that really made her start feeling like this isn't right. You know what? I should keep the baby. And so again, that was a beautiful story.
I love it.
That I love.
Well, talking about babies, what's it like being a grandma?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you asked me what gets me excited, and I love being a grandma. Okay. So I have 4 grandkids now and a 5th one on the way.
Wow.
Robbie and Ashley have a 3rd one coming.
That's amazing.
And I have 2 grand fur babies. They both have little puppies now. So our family is huge. It multiplied. They got married. They both had kids. Unbelievable. I love it. You know, there's nothing like seeing your grandkids. You could have seen them 10 times that day. Their smile, and they're just so excited to see you. And can we have a grandma snack? And they know where to go. I mean, it's the best job on the face of the planet.
That's awesome.
No joke.
Well, congratulations on the 5th one on its on
I know.
Boy, girl, do you
Lily.
know? Lily, girl.
Lily, she's coming in April. Stay tuned.
That's awesome.
Super cute.
I love
know.
it.
I'm so excited.
So obviously you're passionate about spreading the word of God. You're passionate about motivating and helping women that, you know, in any shape or size, whatever they're going through in life. What are some other things that Georgina is passionate about, and what are some projects that you're working on? What's on the horizon for you?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So, we just made a radical move from California to North Carolina.
Yes.
And
I'm following the journey diligently.
It's so much fun. You're going to
who doesn't want to own a farm? And I mean, everyone needs a Jeremy. Like, the guy is just tractors and fences. And it's like, I would hire a bunch of Jeremys to build out my farm, but Jeremy's just in it.
I'm telling you, everybody tells me, I hear that from everybody. How do I get a Jeremy? I'm like, well, I can rent him out perhaps, but no, not going to happen. He's an incredible man.
You both together, you're just executors. When you have an idea, you have to do it, or otherwise you're going to lose your mind.
Yeah.
You just got to do it.
You know what it is, Robert, though, what we've grown into after many years together has been when we're both at peace. It's not always we're on the same page, as you know, right? Being married is just a thing. When we are on the same page about something that we've been actively either praying for, or we're both like, okay, we're both at peace about the same thing. We're like, let's go. And you've seen it. You've seen it. Okay, so he's the best realtor on the face of the planet. And I'm not just plugging you, but truly. So we suddenly make the decision. We had bought that property.
We were at a $100 dinner club one night.
Yes.
And Jeremy was telling me about this like parcel of land you guys bought, basically raw land in North Carolina.
38 acres.
And you're like, yeah, we'll move out there one day. And then like a year later, you call me.
Okay. Another God thing, I have to tell you how this came about, because it is a beautiful story, the whole farm story. So Jeremy and I were looking to, when someday he retires, and at that point it was like 7 years, ahead, we would buy a chunk of land. We were thinking 10, 20 acres, We wanted to leave the state and go somewhere a little bit lower paced and where we could afford land, which here was not going to happen. Yeah, so,
especially 38 acres.
Yeah, exactly. So we were looking in about 4 different states as possibilities, what have you. Long story short, I'm on a work trip on deployment at a big crisis that happened in St. Charles. And I meet a wonderful woman who has become a mentor, and she's now on our board of directors. We became super solid friends. But I meet her, and I told her about our vision for someday, blah, blah, blah. And she says, you know what? When we go home, give me a call, because my husband and I have 38 acres in North Carolina in the Lake Norman area. And we're huge lake people. That we're considering selling. So it was not on the market, nothing, right? So I went home and I'm thinking, 38 acres, way above what we can do, right? But I told Jeremy about it, and long story short, we ended up that very next spring, it was in March, we went to see it. This was years ago, about 4 years ago already. We fell in love with it. Jeremy and I had not agreed on anything we looked at prior to that. It was either too far from the airport, it was too cold of a place, too this, too that. Nothing ever met both of our criteria. We stepped foot on this property in North Carolina. We were both like, this is it. Like, this is it. I can't even explain it. It ended up being in our price range. We purchased it. But again, we weren't going to move for many years. Suddenly, there were some significant changes in Jeremy's job, which at the time you could have seen as something negative.
Yeah, 100%.
But again, it was a decision.
It's a blessing in disguise.
It was not a problem. Everything is a decision, my Georgina, like Dad would say. So sure enough, I said, let's take our time. Don't look for work. Let's take our time and see what God is up to.
Yeah.
We call you. We're like, we've decided we're going to go now. We weren't ready for that. We're going to go now. Within, a couple of weeks, we listed our house.
I mean, you guys had come over for dinner. We want to talk about selling our house. And then you're like, like most people, right? Like the whole, let me look around and I'll let you know when I'm ready. You're like,
right.
Well, we don't know. We're thinking about it. And then like literally the next day I get a text message like, how soon can we get this home on the market?
It's go time. It was go time. And your team, I'll tell you what, I mean, we used to be in real estate together a long time ago when you didn't have this incredible team behind you, and just what a team, man. And for me to get to experience that was truly just joyous, because knowing a lot about real estate myself, I was impressed every turn of the way. I mean, your staff is so committed.
They are.
And they pulled it off. We sold the house in 3 days. Well, we sold it day one, because at the open house, that's when you got like 20 something offers.
Yeah, it was bananas.
It was crazy. There were 100 people to our open house. So needless to say, that was again confirmation of, we're doing the right thing. So we literally packed everything up, went to North Carolina, and started on a huge process. We didn't even have access to our property from the road. So we did have a well and power, but nothing else. So the first 6 months were spent creating this road into the property, into what we call Little Mountain Farms, because it's on Little Mountain Road. So we adopted that name. It is the most beautiful road on the face of the planet. I mean, every time I drive in there, it's like, wow, God, what a gift. What a gift. So now we are, this is where we're at. So now we have access. It's beautiful. we have decided, well, here's God for you. He put in our heart that before we build our personal home, we're going to raise up a building, like a big shop, right? A barn, but it's steel. And that way we can also serve the community, fix things, build things. Like there's so many things we want to do around our own community. We have, for instance, a widow that lives right by our property. And Jeremy, the first time he went out on a tractor to start clearing, he saw that she had needs. Before he even started on ours, he went without even telling her, and he fixed up her entire road. The woman calls me just crying. Your husband is an angel. You know, there's so much need surrounding us, and we're sometimes so busy in our own stuff, we don't recognize that. And I love that about Jeremy. I never even knew. He never even told me. And I'll randomly get calls from people, your husband today came and fixed this, did that. And I'm like, bless his heart. You know, he's got such a huge ministry of his own. So we're building this building, and it's going to be incredible. He's going to be able to help more people. It'll be like a safe haven where we can do great things for others, to help others. And it'll help us also in the building of our own home eventually as well. So it's a huge project, Robert, but it's so exciting.
So what's like the big picture? Like fast forward, 10 years? What does it look like? Is the whole family there? It's just like a multi-generational property?
That is our plan. That is our plan. You know, there's a lot of plans ahead. In fact,
that makes holidays really easy.
Right.
Come to the main house.
Just come to the main house. I know. We're
I'll
laughing.
be in the West Wing.
I know. It's so funny though, because so we have been moved, right? And we've got one kid and his family in Texas. The other one's still in Orange County. But we knew we were supposed to go. And that was really hard, right? Okay, I'm leaving my mom, my grandkids, my everything. But we knew we had to go.
Yeah.
So next thing you know, Robbie and Ashley, they come visit. Literally by the time we arrived with our trailers, we were just unloading and they surprised us in North Carolina and visited, and they decided to move. Next thing you know, Kelsey, days after we left, she's like, we're going too, Mom. We want to go with you. So now, hasn't even been a year since we moved. Both of our kids bought houses. We're all currently living in the same neighborhood. We have a golf cart we go to each other's houses in. It's a blast. It is so cool. And now my mother bought a house there, which you helped sell her house as well, by the way.
Yeah.
So she's moving in January. It's crazy.
The band's
in
back
one
together.
year, everybody moved there.
That's awesome.
It's beautiful. So yeah, our future goal would be to have everyone live on the compound, but with enough acreage themselves where it's like, I don't want to see you guys. I don't have to see you. But hey, Sunday family dinner is at the main house.
The main house.
So
I love
it's
it.
Awesome.
It is so fun to watch you guys do it. We're definitely coming in 2024 to visit.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I can't
Anytime.
wait. I'm just a little bit nervous though, because I feel like by the time we leave, I'll be like, is there space on this 38 acres for us too? Can we build a Mack residence?
You know what? We've got plans. Don't you worry. We may have more than that.
So where does the farm come into everything? I'm still not clear on what you guys are working on there, because I've seen a lot of stuff Robbie's been posting. I know Jeremy's involved. Tell us about the farms. What's it called, by the way? Do you want to plug the handle on Instagram?
Absolutely.
What's the end game here? What's the goal? What's the vision?
So things started evolving. Again, when you open the door and you say yes, opportunities just show up. That's how it works. You know, if you're out there doing something, stuff happens. So in the process, on our farm, we have a rancher who has been ranching with his cows there. He has a bunch of cattle that grazes on our farm. He raises them on our farm. So when we moved there, he was like, is it okay for us to go? We're like, absolutely, So we've got these beautiful cows roaming the property, which is so cool. And as it turns out, we are now going to start selling his meat in smaller cuts, because he actually sells, it's the best beef ever. And I'm not just saying that because they're on our property and we have great grass, but they are so delicious. They are grass-fed. They're corn finished at the very end. Delicious meat, very good quality. And long story short, he sells like half a cow, whole cows, but he doesn't sell individual cuts. And that's something that we have been buying, for ourselves. And we're like, Robbie, who's very entrepreneurial, as you know, him and the man started talking, and he's like, well, we could help you sell these. Long story short, before you know it, now Little Mountain Farm and Cattle, we now get to sell awesome quality beef. I mean, top of the line at a very good price. We want to make it affordable. We don't want it to be where only bougie people can afford the good stuff. We want to be competitive and be able to actually be able to sell our own beef. I mean, and support the farmers. You go to the supermarket and you're buying, the quality is a lot worse. Yeah. You're solely dependent on them.
Commercial meat is just, I hate to say it, it's disgusting.
It is disgusting.
It's the way they treat the animals, the way they process the animals.
It is.
The way God knows what they're pumping into it to make it redder and bigger. And, it's just like, you need to know where you're getting your food and your vegetables and your meat these days, because we don't know what they're doing to it.
And look at where it's headed. I mean, they're
trying to make fake meat now,
crazy
right? It's
fake
insanity.
meat in the process. So more than ever, I believe we need to support our local farmers.
Absolutely.
And so this just happened organically because we were starting to become more active in the community. And so now I'm just very excited about it. Again, it's one more thing that we're doing now that we had no idea we would be doing a year ago, So stay tuned for more on that. We're just kicking it off, and it's exciting. People ask us about it everywhere because they see our little logo on all our pickups and our cards, and the word is getting out. It's crazy.
Cool to hear the story now, because I was like, well, I know Robbie's always been involved in marketing, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, did he just create alliances with different farmers, and now he's selling different meat? But you telling me the story now makes complete sense. So I can't wait to come visit, and we can pet the cows and stuff.
It's a lot more than that. I'll be honest, it's a lot more than that, because Robbie has 2 different entities. So he and Jeremy are heading up Little Mountain Farm and Cattle, which is our personal one. But Robbie also has started his vision. So God put something in his heart to support local farmers, not just in North Carolina, but everywhere. This whole thing...
Like a local farmer network.
Exactly. And it all started in Nebraska for him several years ago. So it's interesting how this has come all back around full circle. So he has our farms, which I'm sure you've seen. That is connecting. That's a whole different ballgame, but it's fascinating. He's literally connecting all the local farmers to people that want to be, making it easy for them to find them and buy direct from the farmers.
Yeah.
Which has been so cool.
Because the farmers aren't entrepreneurial.
They're not.
It's like you can be the best farmer and have the most amazing produce and meat, but if you don't know how to get the word out, no one's going to buy it.
Most of them don't. They're too busy working their buns off.
The high quality product and the consumer.
He is supporting the farmers and helping the consumers to bridge that gap. And it's so exciting, Rob. So you got to stay tuned and look out for it. It's exciting what all is going on. It's a lot.
I love it.
Yeah.
So let's do a couple more questions before we wrap it up. So you answered actually a bunch of them as we were talking, which is awesome.
I still yap a lot.
This is something that I'm curious to know. So the world is changing really, really fast.
Yeah.
What innovative ideas or changes are you excited to see or implement in what you're doing now?
That's a great question. And again, God is stretching me because it's all things that make me uncomfortable, right? But when we get too comfortable, which I tend to do sometimes, like the space I'm in and don't want to learn new things, I believe that we need to utilize all the tools. If Jesus was here today, right, and he could utilize social media, don't you think that he would to reach more people? I mean, he would strategically place himself on a boat in a specific location so that more people could hear him, right? Because that's what he had to use in those days. Well, why not reach more people, right? And I don't like doing video things. I mean, this is a stretch. I'm doing it because I love you. But I don't like being in front of a camera, right? That's uncomfortable for me. I like being in front of people and being able to encourage them that way. However, you know what? You also can't kill yourself always traveling. The older we get, the harder it gets to always be gone all the time. And I've got my family, who is my first priority. My kids, my grandkids, my husband, that is my first priority as a wife and as a mother and grandmother. So I want to be able to do more. So I am starting to stretch myself. First of all, I've been writing a book that I'm very excited about. I was never ready to write it, but every time I would go speak somewhere, the woman would come up to me and say, please, can I take a book? You know, my sister needs to hear this. My mother, my coworker, they really could use this message right now. And for years, it was like, no, 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 no. Because for me, I don't want to sit down and write. I want to go do, be with people. But there's a need. And why not if I can reach more people with the book, right? So I've been writing a book. So that's right around the corner. I've already got a couple of editors waiting for it to read it. It's been a long process. You know what? It's hard to write a book, but it's been stretching me. So I'm almost done with it. I'm hoping to present it within the first quarter of next year. So that is on the horizon. And again, it's to encourage people that are stuck, right? That's my main audience with this particular book I want to reach. And I'll share a lot of my own personal journey because that's how I've learned. Then also to do more with social media, why not? People are most of the day on their cell phones, right? All the information that they're getting is on their phones. So we need to be out there too, because they're listening to some crazy voices sometimes. So we also need to be out there bringing hope. There's so much fear in the world. There's so many unknowns. There's so much negativity and resentments, and we need to do better.
We need to be louder.
Yeah, we need to be louder because those voices are they're winning, right? And no, it's up to us. So that's kind of a huge responsibility that God has put on my heart. It's like, no, don't shy away from it because it makes you uncomfortable. You need to be out there bringing hope, light, faith, guidance, So that's something that I'm learning now, to do a little bit more on that. And I'm hoping to do that on the farm, to make it a very friendly thing, to be able to, I have so many exciting things for next year. I can't even tell you. So it's going to be a little bit more of video stuff. And I want to start a podcast. Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to start this podcast for like 4 years before it actually started. I'm such an overthinker. So if there's anything I can do to help you, let me know.
I'll be taking you up on that because I love your podcast. I watch it. I'm like your number one subscriber.
Thank you so much.
Of course. I love it.
This was an amazing experience. Thank you for saying yes when I asked you.
Absolutely.
I know without a shadow of a doubt that whoever's watching this got insane amounts of nuggets. I got so many nuggets.
So.
Do you have any final thoughts, any advice for the viewer before we close out?
Just from everything we've been speaking about and seeing what God has done in your life and in mine, there is a verse that says, without vision, people perish. And, I just want to encourage you, wherever you are right now, whether you're stuck in a job that maybe feels like, this isn't what I want to do. God really wants to use us where we're planted, and he has the capability to do that. So what I would say is, instead of figuring out what the better job or the better this is, figure out really what ignites you. What is your passion? What is your calling? We all have a calling. It may not be speaking in front of thousands. It may not be selling 1 million houses, but we all have gifts and a calling. Figure out what that is. What is your purpose? God's got one for you. Figure it out and live with that in mind. That's what wakes you up in the morning, not going to some 9-to-5 job or what. He could use you in that 9-to-5 job, but he's got such better things for you. So when you wake up thinking, today I want to help somebody, not today I have to go speak at this conference, it changes your life.
Yeah.
When you wake up and you're like, I want to go into the office and build my coworkers up, go with a different purpose, a higher purpose. And things will start to change around you. They just do.
Yeah. Rather than focusing on what you have to do, focus on what you get to do.
It's
right?
a bigger picture.
The gratitude is so critical because I know that the more we are grateful for the things we have, the more things that we will be given in life to be grateful for. So Thank you so much. Georgina, how can people continue to stay in touch with you? Do you want to throw out your Instagram handle?
Sure. You know what? Instagram, Facebook, it's all Georgina Verzal. So Georgina, you'll put it on the screen. Georgina Verzal.
I will. I definitely will.
Thank you for having me.
This was amazing. I love you so much. Thank you so much for doing this. And maybe we'll have to do a part 2 one day.
Maybe.
On your
we'll
podcast.
do it over there. You come to my podcast next.
Yes.
Done. At the farm.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you found value in this video and you want to share it to somebody, please share it. If you have a comment, leave it below. What else? Subscribe to the channel if you want to continue to receive updates on this podcast. Hit that little bell. That's what all those influencers are saying. Hit the bell so you don't miss any updates. But thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on another episode of the Elevate Podcast.